mentally, like the burden that so many of us carry, trying to fight these foods and maintain control. Like there's also that kind of mental aspect that something that I've thought about is I really did carnivore for health reasons, but the kind of the burden that's been lifted, the freedom that I've had, I guess the best way that I would articulate it, um, no longer being ruled by food, like me being in charge, uh, that's probably been the best aspect of carnivore. And it wasn't even why I did it, but it's incredible.
Joanne, could you tell us about your health journey? How did you discover carnivore?
Yeah, so it seemed completely by accident. I just to give some background, food was my life. It was not only my career. I was a recipe developer, a food blogger, but like all of my free moments, like weekends, nights were spent scouting out new restaurants, going to the bakeries, cooking. Food was my obsession. But when I discovered carnivore, my health was in a really bad place. I've kind of had several chronic health issues since I was a kid, but in this case, I was having really severe digestive bleeding, and it got really bad during my pregnancy with my second child, and even several months after I had given birth, I was still dealing with this bleeding, and it was suggested that I have surgery. And I really didn't want to do the surgery because I was nursing my daughter and you got to do anesthesia. Like I knew it would have wrecked my milk supply. And so I just kept searching, like, what can I do to resolve this? And there is a day on YouTube, I saw a video on carnivore. I just saw this thumbnail, clicked it, watched it. And, because I was in the food industry, everything's so plant based, like plant focused, and I was part of that. By that time, um, I wasn't like vegan or plant based. I don't think I could say that, but most of what I was eating was like plants. I was guzzling the green juice. So I thought this sounded so crazy. Carnivore just sounded just bananas to me. But I was so desperate that I'm like, I'm just going to try it. And within 2 days, my bleeding completely went away. Bleeding that I had struggled with for over a year at that point. And not only that, but all these other things that I'd been told by many doctors, were incurable things, also went away. Like I've had really severe gastritis, acid reflux. I had had an endoscopy and a colonoscopy in college, and basically, I took acid blockers. No one could really figure it out. The problem was the food. Spoiler alert. Um, yeah, I've struggled with constipation pretty much all my life as well. So all these like things went away right along with it, and it really broke my brain. There was so much cognitive dissonance happening. Um, but I kept doing it for 2 weeks until I fell off the wagon at a birthday party. It wasn't planned to not stick with carnivore, but I've always loved food, so I fell off, and the bleeding started again immediately, and the acid reflux returned, all this stuff. And that night, I decided I'm gonna try this for like 3 months, like a 90-day carnivore trial. And by the end of those 90 days, I just knew that I wouldn't be going back. It was just a preview. It was a battle to solidify this in my life, and now I can't believe it. I first discovered carnivore over 5 years ago, but it was hard because food was just such as very much an emotional eater, like stress eating, boredom eating. Just it was. I loved food, so that was hard to kind of pick apart those little obstacles that stood in the way. But I don't know how you grew up eating, Todd, but for me, I grew up eating junk food. I realized after my carnivore trial, I never knew what like feeling healthy was actually like. I've never been healthy since I was a child. Um, and I think that was just so profound for me. So yeah, once I experienced it, I couldn't believe it, but it's better than all that food, which an older version of me couldn't have fathomed such a crazy thing.
Awesome. And you mentioned stress eating there. That made me think because I'm also a parent. I've got a 3-year-old son. I've gone through phases where you're really trying to diet down hard, you're trying to cut your calories, and you have these cravings plus the additional stress, feeling a responsibility of being a parent. That can be really overwhelming. And I can remember days like eating and like hiding in the pantry or hiding in the bathroom eating junk food. Like it sounds really, I'm sure my wife and my son wouldn't have cared, but it's like you put so much pressure on yourself as a parent already.
I can raise my hand on that one. I don't judge you at all. I've been there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have 3 kids and I
Oh,
mean, even 1 kid, it's tough.
mm,
And actually, it's funny because there were so many, things in my life that I had to kind of work to decondition. So like an example of something as typical is if people are like, "Oh, I had a hard day at work. That means that I can, have the ice cream." So we all tell ourselves these little things, that kind of green light this behavior to eat. And one of the hardest, like the last remaining ones that I had a hard time, not indulging was when I just felt completely overwhelmed with the kids and my husband would be, off working or something. I'm just like, I can't deal. I'm gonna eat these cookies or whatever, just to escape or tolerate this moment. It's tough. Modern life is tough and it's so easy, and we're prompted so much to fix that with food.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, 100% agree. What does your like full day of eating look like? What do you normally eat?
What do I normally eat? Um, I am a big beef fan.
Mhm.
I've dug a little bit into the science of this, but there's such a difference in your sense of satiety from something like beef versus like chicken or pork, even though I eat those things too. Like I'm not a lion diet person by any means, even though I like seafood, salmon. Uh, but it's funny because, if I make salmon for dinner, sometimes I'll have like a burger patty after. Like my husband and I will joke, like, "Up, where's the beef?" So I eat a lot of beef, a lot of burgers. Um, a lot of that's like cost, although I've learned to like burgers. Um, Dairy, I've kind of been off and on. Um, yeah, I try to stay away from the dairy. It can be very stimulating, I think, in a way that, uh, yeah, just stimulates craving for more. So I have to be careful with that. And actually, lately, I know that some people will come out with the pitchforks, but I've been having a few pickles with my burger patties, so that's not carnivore. But it's been so long for me, and the pickles don't seem to have any sort of impact on acid reflux or really anything that I've noticed. So I'm good with that. Um, yeah, so I grill a lot, multiple times a day usually. Meat loves fire, so I grill a lot, use my griddle. Yeah. I've gotten
Excellent.
kind of sorry, I would just say I've noticed I've gotten kind of tired of eggs and bacon. Like after all this time, which is interesting to me because I feel like in the beginning of carnivore, I ate a lot of bacon.
Mm. Yeah, I definitely find at the start, especially if you're like you have those cravings for sugar, I find bacon's really a good little diet hack. Like it kind of satisfies that sweet tooth, but it can keep you on track.
Yeah, and I think that there's nothing wrong with that. Like I've noticed with a lot of my clients and with myself, like when you're transitioning from really any other way of eating to carnivore, whether that's standard American diet or even keto or paleo, um, you tend to need a lot more variety in the beginning, especially because your dopamine receptors are in just such a different place versus when you do something like a carnivore diet, a high fat diet, or even fasting. Your body will increase the D2 receptors in your brain, like your dopamine. The meat will become more satisfying, but that takes time. And so I think there's nothing wrong with bridge bacon or whatever you need to try to keep things satisfying enough that you can continue on in the diet.
Yeah, absolutely. After that, you said 90 days, you found, okay, there's no going back. I'm gonna stick with carnivore. Did you notice any difference in your mental health or mental clarity?
Oh yeah. I have struggled with anxiety and depression since I was a child. And It's not like I'm how do I put this? It's not that I don't have struggles now, but it's so different from what it was. And the times that I've deviated, it is amazing. Like you pay attention, you really notice, at least for me, the irritability, the mood swings. It's like my temper, my patience is a lot shorter. I remember like I've deviated enough because, like I said, it was kind of a battle to solidify this in my life. I've experienced it enough times, and I'm like, okay, this is not a fluke. there's a there's a pattern here. Um, but I think even there's kind of the physical mental part, like what I'm talking about, where like the irritability, the mood swings, but even mentally, like the burden that so many of us carry trying to fight these foods and maintain control, like there's also that kind of mental aspect that something that I've thought about is I really did carnivore for health reasons, but the kind of the burden that's been lifted, the freedom that I've had, I guess the best way that I would articulate it, um, no longer being ruled by food, like me being in charge, uh, that's probably been the best aspect of carnivore, and it wasn't even why I did it, but it's incredible.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Like the burden's been lifted, and that food noise has gone. And I feel like I like that feeling of having a full meal. I'm satisfied, and I don't procrastinate anymore. I don't know if you've noticed that. I used to be the king of procrastination. Couldn't get anything done. Couldn't focus on study or work. But now I just feel like a different person.
Yeah. Well, I love that you said that. You feel like a different person because um, I had a client that I started working with several months ago, and I was telling him recently, I'm like, you are such a different person than like the man that I had this call with several months ago, and he agreed. Like, people don't realize the impact that this food has on you until you're out of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's just like eating real food, but yet we're taught, oh, you need your 5 servings of fruit and vegetables every day. You shouldn't eat red meat. You shouldn't eat eggs. Yeah, I feel like it's just marketing. It's just propaganda. You've really got to listen to your own body and do your own research, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it's I did this interview a while ago from someone, it appears that she never published this article. She was assigned, um, she told me that she was planning, it was gonna be kind of an anti-carnivore piece, and she asked me, "Have you ever, like, considered or thought, like, that maybe you're wrong?" And I said, "Of course. The problem is that when I stop doing carnivore and I go back to the other foods, all my health problems come back." Like, it's interesting. I think that there's a lot of conflicting information in food. There you can find something to support every angle, support vegan, or like, support meat. There's so much out there, and I think the only way that you can really put it to rest is by giving it a test drive yourself. I mean, there's nothing trumps your own experience, and I find that for a lot of people who do this long term, it's so obvious that a lot of these foods are a big problem for health.
Mm, absolutely. And I think a lot of people will say, oh, it's all about balance and it's all about moderation. I'm not the type of person that can moderate. If I have some chocolate, like the whole block will just be just, I just can't help myself. So I just find it's better just to cut that stuff out and those cravings for sugar just disappear after a while.
Yeah, the abstainer versus moderator discussion is so interesting to me because I really wonder if that's so set in stone or if you can if that's something that can change, but I think it's almost like you get to a point where you look back at your history and what your patterns are, and you're honest about the fact that, like, oh, I don't eat one piece of chocolate, I eat the whole block of chocolate, and I would definitely raise my hand on that one. I mean, my goodness, before carnivore, like, I was cooking all this stuff. If I had leftover cake or cookies in the morning, I would eat cake for breakfast. Like, it's kind of embarrassing to say that, but I couldn't resist. If it was there, I would eat it and eat a lot of it usually.
Yeah, I've definitely been there. Like I used to do 6 days of really hard, strict dieting, and then you blow it out on the seventh day, and then you go strict again. And like I repeated the cycle for about 3 years. And as you said, you got to look back and really be honest with yourself. That isn't working. Like the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again. You expect a different result.
Yeah, I mean, goodness, me too. I feel like so many people just can relate to that. And I think I almost feel like so much damage has been done by all of this dieting, like with just collective dieting as a society, like how obsessed we've been um, with these various programs. And, I don't know if you're familiar with the Minnesota starvation experiment. Um, yeah. Are you okay, yeah, but it's just so fascinating when you look into the details of that, and, like, these are just normal men in their 20s and 30s, like, they don't have eating disorders, like, they're probably not even thinking about controlling their eating, and they just went, like, with the food restriction, with the semi-starvation, like, they just went insane. Like, we when we get into these restrictive cycles, it is so unhealthy and it just messes us up completely. Like we need to feel freedom to choose what we're eating. And so it took me a long time to kind of reconcile and come to terms with these foods that I loved. Um like I don't have to give these things up, but like do I really want to continue down this path? And there's kind of like a grief and a mourning of that reality, but just accepting like what is. And like I really, that food is so pleasurable and it's so romanticized, and I was really into like, oh, we gather around the table and have this wonderful meal and the dessert and all that stuff, and letting that go because this is ultimately better and I can't have both.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely agree. How many meals per day do you normally go for?
Hmm. um so I guess I'll say I earlier on in carnivore, I was not someone who liked fasting. Um, and the reason why is because when I would fast, I found that when I'd get into that hunger feeling, which if you're fasting for any reasonable amount of time, you're going to get that hungry feeling. It would kind of trigger something in me where I would just fall off completely and eat something off plan. So fasting for me was too tough. Like I needed the sustenance. I couldn't really deal. It would just put me in the danger zone. So in the beginning, I would basically just eat whenever I felt like it. Uh, and so sometimes, I mean, when I was first transitioning, I would sometimes like I would eat dinner at 6 p.m. like to satiety, and then 8 o'clock I would need another, small meal. I think because I was not really fat adapted. Eventually, it got to the point where I wouldn't eat until like noon or 2 in the afternoon. Not because I was trying to fast, I wasn't. Just because I wasn't hungry. Um, and I'd usually wrap up dinner by like 7. So the window really shrunk down, and kind of the number of meals as I went on, but it wasn't something that really planned or forced. It just kind of happened, really kind of out of laziness. Like in the morning, like, oh, should I eat something? Like even if I was a little hungry, I'm like, I don't feel like cooking something right now, like, and just carrying on because you feel so different. You have the fat on tap, like your energy on tap, so it's just a completely different way of being. Um, I've never done the 1 meal a day thing, but I guess I'll say recently I not for, I actually this isn't for health purposes. I started doing longer fasting for spiritual purposes, and so I started doing, like, 2 or 3-day fasts, occasionally. Um, so it's kind of I don't know if I have a standard answer. I feel like I'm kind of tinkering or experimenting, for different reasons. But I'd say typically probably 2 meals a day is probably my most standard. Yeah, but it's not like if I'm hungry, I want something, I'll eat a meal. One of my my favorite things that I've noticed and some of the clients I've worked with is I had this client, he loved to track. I hate tracking my food. That's part of why I like carnivore. But he liked to track. He just found it interesting and it didn't trigger him. And so he knew that he'd typically eat about 2,500 calories a day. And there came a point in his life where he was under extreme stress. Something had happened where it was just a big life disruption. And he noticed he was eating like 4,000 calories a day. Um, and the wild thing is that he didn't gain any weight and eventually kind of trickled back down. But I think that it's such a reminder that our body's needs are dynamic, and so I think that's something to pay attention to, even as we go along in life, and there are various stressors that we have to deal with that are probably unexpected. And so, um, yeah, I've never really planned. I just kind of follow, and I because of the nature of carnivore and our bodies understanding it's like how you think about water and how your body kind of manages how much water you need. Like you have thirst and you respond. Um, I find that meat is very much like that. Like I can trust my body to kind of guide my intake.
Nice. Yeah, that's a really good point. I think you've got to really listen to your body. Like, if you're not hungry, then you don't need to eat. But if you are hungry, you should eat until you're satisfied. I used to track, but I don't track anymore. And that first 2 weeks on carnivore, I have a really big appetite. I was probably doing about 4,000 ish
Wow.
calories, but I actually lost half a kilo in that week. That might have been water weight. It might have been, I don't know, stress or who knows. But yeah, I find it interesting. You can't always rely on the scale. You've got to kind of think, do I feel good? Do I have good energy? Do I feel strong?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's one of the benefits of carnivore is you can do that. You can't you can't let your body lead when you're eating donuts and pie or whatever. It doesn't work the same.
Yeah, exactly. If someone came to you and said, "Look, I want to try carnivore. Maybe I need to lose some weight," how would you recommend they do that? Do you recommend like slowly transitioning in, or do you like to like just jump straight in?
I always recommend cold turkey. Jump right in. I One of the stories that I tell on my podcast is uh, my most recent pregnancy. Um, I had to have some carbs with breastfeeding. I could not do carnivore for all of it, and I discuss, why there. Um, but so when I was kind of ready to get back to carnivore, it was my son was old enough that like if I did lose too much of my milk supply, like it'd be okay. But I wanted to hold on to it, so I was very diligent about tracking my carbs and lowering them. Like I think I was dropping it down like 10 carbs a week. So it was like, 190, it was I had to weigh everything and it was so fine tuned just so I didn't disrupt my body supply. And it was one of the most torturous things I've ever done. Um, when you have like let's say like I don't know, 40 grams of carbs, like that's like a cup of blueberries and a few carrot sticks maybe. Like it's such a small amount. And I find that when even blueberries, like I don't want just one cup of blueberries, like I want 3 cups of blueberries. It's so hard to have that little bit of carb like stimulating you, and then it's like nope, no more. I don't know, that's really tough. I feel like I lost sight of your original question. You're talking about oh, yeah, 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 so that's that's why I don't recommend tapering in. I think that it's really hard to do well. It's really hard, and people can get into some weird habits where, like, let's say they're changing over meal by meal and they're like, okay, I'll do carnivore for breakfast, regular meals, lunch and dinner, and then change it over. Sometimes then people get into weird things where they're like cramming in their comfort foods and their like acceptable times. Like it gets so messy. Like even if you say, oh, carnivore plus fruit, well, what kind of fruit? Because mangoes, bananas, like those have more sugar than, the strawberries or whatever. It's just jump in. Just jump in. I don't think the other way works for most people.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I'm not the type of person that can have a little bit of honey before a workout. I want to have like honey, then I'll have some fruit, then I'll have something else. It's like it just keeps going and going and going. So yeah, that makes sense. Just cut it out. Just get into it.
Yeah. I think the weight loss too, you mentioned that, someone who wants to kind of carnivore to lose weight. I think we all kind of want to lose weight, like that's not a bad thing to want. But I think it's important to uh, try to focus more on the health wins that you get from carnivore. Because I think something I've seen too is when people are overly focused on weight, they can kind of sabotage their carnivore success. I had this client um, who was just so deeply ingrained with the like, I must count calories, like ideology. And so she was restricting her calories on carnivore and she was legitimately hungry and she kept falling off the wagon. And I was like, you need to just let go of the weight. Like the weight will come. If you have a period, if you make this diet sustainable, like the weight loss will take care of itself. Try to focus on and even yeah, so try to focus like when you're eating your meals, like the little things like does your joint pain go away or you don't have acid reflux when you eat the meat, and hold on to those things to motivate you to continue the diet, and um, try not to get so focused on the weight because it can get very messy and almost sabotage your efforts if you're not careful.
Yeah, absolutely. What are your thoughts on coffee and supplements while you're on carnivore?
So the coffee, I think that coffee is a tough, I guess I'll call it a food or substance, a tough substance for the body to handle. I think typically people feel better when they get rid of it, but I never recommend that people give up coffee at the same time as carnivore just because I'm sure someone has done it. But I think that's probably really, really hard because your energy already suffers so much when you switch from basically any other diet to carnivore until you become fat adapted. And I think too, if you're switching from another diet to carnivore and you keep the coffee, you're still going to see such a massive difference in your health. So um, I think I'm okay with I don't argue with people's coffee consumption, although I do tell people to watch. Sometimes there can be this inclination to, when you get rid of the carbs, to kind of increase your coffee consumption. There's a little bit of substitution happening. I think you have to watch that. What was the other thing? You said coffee and supplements. This is such a tricky thing, and I guess I'll divulge right now that my health right now is not in a great place because we found out we were living in really toxic black molds about a year ago. We all got really sick, colonized by the mold, and we've been working on detoxing, and that's been a health journey on its own. And then we recently found out that we have Lyme disease and co-infection, so now we're starting to treat that. And so I actually am taking a lot of supplements right now, which is a change for me because I never took supplements on carnivore. Even in the beginning, when like there's a lot of the electrolyte balance issues changing over from a carb filled diet. Even then, I didn't really take a lot of supplements there. I more tried to drink the Gerolsteiner, like the sparkling water that actually has a lot of like electrolytes in it. I've just never really been a fan, and I don't think most people need supplements, but there are other health things at play aspects, like I said right now, dealing with the mold and the Lyme disease, where sometimes you need that, and carnivore isn't gonna, fix all those things. So I think generally people, I don't think that carnivore mandates that you take supplements, uh, but there are other aspects of health where you might need it. I did. This was interesting though. So my doctor who's treating me, when she saw basically my B level vitamin, she's like, "Wow, like I thought your B vitamins would be way lower than this," and she said it's probably carnivore that's helped keep that up. So it is a very nutritious way of eating, I think, typically, but that's not to say that supplements won't be needed, not because of the diet, but because of other health issues that we can come into.
Yeah. definitely. It's a good way of putting it. You mentioned fat adaptation before. How long do you typically find that takes? Like I've heard it's like 12 days, it could be 2 weeks, maybe it depends on the person.
Oh, wow. I uh my understanding is that's like 6 months, 12 months, like for full fat adaptation. Although I think it's like a spectrum, right? Like you're becoming more and more fat adapted, up to a point, obviously. I think a year is probably like you're good at that point. I think to see the first levels of that is probably, like you said, about 2 weeks. That people start to feel better and things. That different kind of machinery comes online. Um, but yeah, I'd say that like a month in is probably another milestone, and then probably like the 90 to 100 day is another big milestone, and it happens so slowly. I think you just kinda look back and you're like, "Wow, like, I feel really good," or like, "Oh, I haven't eaten yet and it's 2 o'clock." Just because the energy flows, so easily from your fat stores.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and after the 12, 14-day mark, sugar cravings are gone, I've got more energy, I'm sleeping better, and then I think the further you go into it, then I sort of noticed strength gains in the gym, like strength is going up sort of like easily, like naturally. It's sort of hard to explain. Um, yeah, it sounds crazy to probably the average person, but it's like you feel superhuman after a while.
Yeah, definitely, I do some weightlifting because I had spine surgery 12 years ago, and after that, I was like, "This is never happening again." I'm not like a big time lifter, but I do it, just to stay strong. And my heaviest lifts have been since carnivore, like by far. So that I mean, and that I feel like that's become more mainstream now that like for athletic performance, you don't necessarily need carbs. There are a lot of people who can vouch for the contrary.
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually gonna be one of my questions. How many days do you typically like work out in the gym, and have you tried training with carbs versus being on carnivore?
Yeah, so I would lift maybe 3 times a week. Um, and right now my exercise is a lot lighter just because of my condition. So I do more like walks and bike rides. Um, Although I've kind of always liked walks. That might not be the best exercise, but I just really enjoy walks. Um, I haven't run since my surgery. I'd say, like, if I'm really trying to get the cardio up, I'll do, like, a sprint type bike ride. Um, but I actually think exercise is funny because people talk so much about exercise as, like, the reason to do that is weight loss, and I think that sells exercise so short. Um, I think exercise is so much more important than people realize just for, like our brain and our bodies and longevity and just feeling good. Like there's so many other aspects to exercise that are important, like apart from the exercise. Yeah. So the carbs with the exercise, you know, I haven't really tested that because I wouldn't really consider adding carbs to see how it alters my athletic performance. Like I just don't even want to go there. So it's just kind of out of the question.
Yeah, I've tried it, and I've heard a lot of that in the carnivore space. People that are like athletic or bodybuilders, they'll add in honey or fruit before a workout. I've tried that, and I can't like just can't do it. I just can't help myself.
This is kind of like a more female thing, but people also say that like a certain times of your cycle you need carbs, and that doesn't appear to be the case, at least for me. Like my cycle, everything is just so much better with no carbs at all. Just lighter. I used to have debilitating cramps and pain. Like it's all gone. Yeah.
Awesome. How have your like friends, family reacted to you being on carnivore?
People are supportive. But it's funny because, they're supportive, but they're kinda doing their own thing. I know that a lot of people really struggle. Like I am apparently very blessed because I work with a lot of people where like their own spouse doesn't want them doing carnivore, or they'll be at work and their coworkers make comments, their parents make comments, like whoever. So yeah, I'm very fortunate that people just kind of work with it and they don't make a big deal about it. But I know it's not always the case.
Nice. Yeah. If say you had a client or a friend, they're doing carnivore and they're thriving, they're doing really well. But what happens if their partner or their friends are not supportive? How would you handle that?
Yeah. So I think one of the most important things to recognize first is that I don't think that this is with malicious intent, but typically other people, they almost want to sabotage your healthy eating. Like they don't want you doing that. And it's because a lot of people struggle with their own eating. They kind of know that they, I don't want to say shouldn't be eating what they're eating, but in some ways, like they do, if they have diabetes or whatever, and they're eating the cake or drinking the soda, like you kind of know that's feeding into the disease. Um, and a lot of people, they don't want to face that, or they even get offended if you're abstaining from stuff like that. And so, you, once you're aware of that, you will start seeing it all the time. I have some very funny stories where, like my husband, this one party, he wasn't saying he didn't say anything, make any comments to anyone about their eating, about his eating. He just was choosing not to eat the stuff that was out. Um, and it's just someone called him out, like, "Oh, do you think you're better than all of us, like not eating these things?" It's just, and it was just so out of nowhere. And it's sad because they're they're triggered by what you're doing, or rather what you're not eating. Even if you don't say anything about it, it's not like he was glaring at everyone. Like he's just talking to people and existing, but not eating this stuff. Um, and so I could tell a lot of stories like that where people are uncomfortable. And so recognizing it, having compassion, like it's nothing to, I don't think it's intentional. But recognizing people don't want you doing that, and that's fine. What do you want for yourself? And standing in that, being strong in your choice. And um, yeah, you must be doing carnivore and trying to change your health for a reason. Stick to those reasons. It's none of it's not anyone else's business. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you need to have a little bit of a sense of humor about it as well, because it does sound ridiculous in a way. I mean, if you're eating a certain way, you feel good, your health is improving. You just need to sort of be strong and to sort of stay the path.
Hmm. Yeah, there's a the C.S. Lewis quote that I like. It's something like, when the whole world is running toward a cliff, like he who's running in the opposite direction appears to have lost his mind. And I think like we as a society, like the cliff is like all of these foods clearly take us over the cliff. Like 74% of people are overweight or obese, like 66% on prescription drugs, like 60% of people have at least one chronic illness, like 50% of people are pre-diabetic or diabetic. Like we have a clear picture of like where these foods take us off the cliff into just major health problems. And so that is so apparent, at least to me. Like the data is there to support what this food that we're collectively eating like does to us. And at the same time, a lot of people don't know that, or they don't realize that. And so when you're running in the other direction and not going to where those foods take you, not eating those foods, like you look crazy. And being okay with that, accepting that, and practicing compassion for or just when people get triggered or are upset by that.
Yeah, absolutely. Joanne, could you tell us about your what you do and your social media?
Yeah, so I am really only in two places. The Road to Carnivore podcast. It's pretty much every podcast platform, also on my website, theroadtocarnivore.com. And then I have my YouTube channel, also the name The Road to Carnivore. I'm really not on any other social media. I was on Instagram and I left it up. A friend stopped me from deleting it, but I'm really not a big social media user. So it's just the YouTube channel and podcast.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll leave a link to your social media in the description of the video. So if people want to reach out to you or they want to see what you're doing, they can do that.
Thank you.
No problem. Well, thanks so much for your time today, Joanne. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. This is so fun. It's nice to meet you, Todd.
Yeah, you too. It was great fun.